Well, hey everybody, I'm so excited because I have what I sort of consider like a great elder of Sanc. I hope you're not offended by me using that
Are you
word.
saying that because of the fine highlights I've
That's
got
right.
going on here, Adam?
That's right. Well,
The
I've got
new
the
look. Hey,
beard.
this is the new younger look, so you might want to
That's
think
right.
about it. So
I've got the beard going great, and I just put on
yeah, I
a
can
hat.
see it. It's
Yeah, I
it's
put
gonna
on a
come at
hat.
you whether you like it or not. It's gonna come for you. So
Great. That's great
yep.
news. Well, this is Scott Scruggs, and he is super influential in my life. I think I've told you this before, but one of the big reasons I came out here in the first place, one of the reasons my wife and I felt called to come to Menlo and the Bay Area was because of you and
Mm.
just the way you lead and pastor. So I just thought it'd be neat to talk a little bit about the past of Sank and just hear from him briefly. So, Scott, I know you started attending Sank is probably right after the Great Depression, somewhere uh, a little farther back.
Yeah, thanks.
But but could
Uh,
you maybe just start by telling us how you even,
yeah,
as a Bay Area person, started at Sank and attended
yeah,
and that process?
yeah. Actually, Sanctuary, if my memory serves me right, was founded or started around the year 2002, which does feel a little bit like Great Depression. That's almost 20 years ago. And I actually was serving at Menlo as an intern in the college ministry and was about to go to seminary. And this new ministry started called Sanctuary that just seemed radically different. And on a couple of fronts. One was it had this commitment to just authentic community and
Hmm.
showing up as you are, and people could be a mess. And um, there was something just like radically attractive about that. So that was one side, but it had this very kind of curious, wonderful, beautiful outward focus. Like we want to
Hmm.
exist for the sake of the people who aren't here.
Yeah.
Like we want to be about those who aren't here. And then I was out of the area for a few years and then moved back and came on staff at Menlo and was serving in the college ministry, which is called Cornerstone, and got involved in Sanctuary both as a staff person early on and the college kind of component of it. And then a couple of years later, took it on as the leader and served as the leader of Sanctuary for 5, 6, 7 years. It was a stretch and really got to see God do some amazing, amazing things. So it
Yeah.
has a beautiful history of thinking carefully about how to just be a place where you can come as you are, and a real key focus for the people around it, which I just thought was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, and it's cool to hear like you describe it from those years and how really that is still the essential core of what we are. Even thinking pre-pandemic of what we were known for and what was happening in the community, that's still the core. And so that's so
Mm,
cool to hear.
yeah.
I'd love to hear you just talk briefly about, so you took over as leader, and I'm sure you saw different changes or challenges in the community as a whole, and maybe just how did that go about? How did you guys navigate? Like, okay, what kind of ministry are we going to be? How are we going to pivot? How are we going to change? How are we going to reach people?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really in the DNA, I think, of that ministry to be open to God's new thing.
Hmm,
New wineskins is the language you often hear about in the Bible, and to say when the Spirit moves, it never looks quite the same. And I know when I stepped in, one of the things that the Spirit led us to was a real focus on, that in between generation, the 20 something generation at the time. I was in my early 30s, so I'd already kind of graduated out, but I just felt like,
yep,
people that were coming into college or out of college or into the workforce, or at least out of their home as a young person, were having questions about faith, about life, about meaning, about their professional life,
yep,
about finances and relationships and sexuality. And where do we go to talk about that? And
right,
how do we have a place where we can honestly dig in and just but be where we are? And it sometimes feels like churches are places where most people are through that or beyond that, or maybe they'd figured it out or thought they had, or it felt like youth group. And we needed a
right,
place kind of in between that felt like, no, this is a serious place to ask those questions. But it really has to do with this season of life that was so unique. So we prayed and worked hard to say, hey, we want to be that place for all around the peninsula and the Bay Area for people to come and meet people in that kind of age and stage, and be able to ask those kind of questions. And that's what God did. I mean, it was something where it grew by the hundreds over those years of people saying, I just don't know of another place like this. And that's part of what's so wonderful about it is, and I think it's probably still true. I don't live in the area, but my guess is from the people I know, it's still it's people coming saying, I don't know of another place quite like this. And that's God's Spirit at work in that unique ministry.
Well, so Scott, you have all of our attention right now. We are, as we've talked about, we're sort of rebuilding Sanc in a new stage of life, a new stage of our church. And I'd love to just hear if you have any wisdom, any thoughts, any advice that you could give us in this next stage as a community.
Yeah. Well, I certainly have seen what God can do in that community. And I would say God is not finished with it. And there's something about the COVID era that makes us all think, that chapter's over, or the churches are changing, or the world's kind of gone to whatever, and it's kind of a mess. And, I'm kind of tired of hearing Christians talk about how the world's gotten so bad versus Christians talking about how the kingdom of God is actually so good. And for Sanctuary to be the kind of place where we're going to double down that the kingdom of God is an amazing place, and change still happens, and community still happens, and redemption still happens, and new life still happens. And I think Sanctuary can and should be the evidence of that for the peninsula and beyond. I think it should be the petri dish where God's proving how powerful he still is, and it can happen in that place. And for those of you listening and watching who are thinking about where do I plug in and will I fit, it's like it takes everyone saying like, I want to be part of something like that. Not because it's perfect, not because they have all the answers, not because we'll always be in the same building or the same place, or all that can change, all that should change, but to have the same core commitment that we want to see God do something that only God can do, and we don't want to miss out on that. Yeah. And I think that is as much of what's before Sanctuary as it is in the past. And as much as I love the days where I was there and they were some of the best days of my life, I'll look at you and say, I think the best days for Sanctuary are still before you.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks so much, man. I don't know if you want to finish the rest of the sermon yourself. We could just hand it over to you. Yeah.
No, Adam, I'm too expensive for that. You can't. So.
That's true. That's true. Dude, I respect you and just appreciate you so much, and just love that word. I mean, talking about commitment, that's one of the reasons we want to have this conversation. Is it is going to take more than me, and more than a few core volunteers. It's going to take this entire community. So appreciate that, man.
Everybody.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I know you probably need to get it's nap time for you and your kids about right now.
It is. I would love a nap. Thank you. I'll go home and ask if that's okay, because I'm sure my 4-year-old and 1-year-old won't allow that to happen. But yeah.
True. Well, thanks so much, man. We appreciate
I appreciate you, Adam. Blessings, and yay, Sanc, and way to go, everybody.